What's up? Welcome everybody to another episode of Meditation Matters. Previously, I talked about vulnerability, what it is, what it means, why it matters, and I actually have a good friend here, Osa or Saze. I call him by other names, but I'll let him completely introduce himself and what he does and his creative journey and just everything about himself. So, but we're gonna dive into vulnerability part 2 in a sense, really just getting his take on what vulnerability is, his experience with like how has being vulnerable helped him in life, and if there has been any power in being a vulnerable person, whether or not it be through his music or through anything else. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and just talk about who you are, and I'll moderate you to some degree.
Yeah, keep me in check.
But go ahead, do what you gotta do.
Whole name is Osaze. I talk to you or the camera?
You talk to everyone.
Yeah, everyone. So my whole name is Osaze, but as an artist, people just call me Saze. But just kind of, I think I was pushed into vulnerability just because, well, let's first define what vulnerability means.
Yeah,
right?
I want to know your definition.
I think just at like face value, it means kind of just being open. Being willing to share certain parts of yourself that are hidden, being transparent in a certain way. And I think growing up, I'm gonna describe myself as a loser with like a minimal amount of friends, wasn't popular. And like that was a very hurtful period early on, like in 7th grade and whatnot, but I think it broke down my self-esteem to like a very negatively low point. But because it broke down my self-esteem, I think there's also an element of breaking down of the ego.
Right.
So like my pride was very, very shattered. And I think that gave me a certain willingness to just be very open about like pain and trauma and my feelings on stuff, because I felt like I kind of had nothing anyway. So I might as well just be open.
So I'm gonna stop you real quick. What, in terms of openness, what ways did you find yourself allowing yourself to express those, to be vulnerable, to express the feelings that you're feeling? Was it through writing or communication? Like, what type of communication were you using? What happened?
Well, like that's when I got really into songwriting. Okay. So like 7th grade, and like I wasn't talking to people about my problems, but like I was just writing about them a lot. But I was always writing them with this like focus on, I want to become a musician. So ultimately I'm going to be saying these words to a lot of people.
Right.
But I was perfectly okay with it. Like it was fine diving into like suicidal thought in that song format, because it feels like a safe space. Knowing that eventually I'm going to be performing this in front of like a stadium of people, right? Or a theater of people. And at that point, you're putting out vulnerable messages, hoping to reach other people, and then bring them into a space where maybe they're just going to be vulnerable with themselves, right? Like, I remember making someone cry with a record, right? And I think crying is one of the ultimate vulnerable moments. And I think like you often don't predict that you're going to cry. You don't go into something trying to cry.
Right.
It's often just pulled out of you. So I think when a song's able to cut to you like that, that's kind of why we make vulnerable music, because we want to, I think when people are being vulnerable together in the same space, it creates like a warm, empathetic vibe in the room. There's like an understanding, there's a comfort.
And there's also builds like a bond, right? Like you can be bonded to someone you've never met before. I did a meditation weekend when I first learned Shudasha Kriya. Which is actually something I talked about in an earlier episode, so check out episode 3. But yeah, so I did the happiness program, which is pretty much like you're learning the fundamentals of Shudasha Kriya and other like just overall philosophies, Buddhist principles, and everything else, right? And it was Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It wasn't like a retreat, so we had to keep coming back those days. But I was just meshed with like 8 other people. I've never met them a day in my life. By the end on Sunday, I loved every single one of them as if they've always been in my life. And it was crazy. There were so many exercises we did that really plunged us into a very vulnerable space. And like there was one that really I remember significantly is like we were all sitting like in front of each other on our knees, face to face, and we couldn't talk. We were just staring in each other's eyes, and then we kept, after like 2 minutes, we'd rotate to the next person and rotate to the next person. So we're just staring at each other, not communicating verbally, but just literally staring into each other's eyes. And like every person that did it was just like bawling, crying. Everyone's just crying together. Everyone's just hugging each other. Everyone's just like, when we first started learning the Shadasha Kriya, like the teacher took us through everything the first time. By like the final day of us like really trying to practice it and understand it, like everyone just started bawling. Like we're all in our own sections just meditating, and like one lady, like she starts hysterically laughing, right? And we understand that like this is part of the practice. We know that when you get to the end, you can either start hysterically laughing, you can do nothing at all, you could cry, whatever it may be. It's because you're like unlocking certain energy channels and it's just welling up, right? So she started hysterically crying, immediately started she was hysterically laughing, then immediately started crying after the hysterical laughter, and speaking in Spanish. I love you, Papi. I miss you so much. I wish you were here, but it's okay. I love you, Papi. And like in that moment, the whole room just started sniffling, crying. Like it was crazy, and it was just like, so that was just such a vulnerable thing, right? That we did, and it really bonded us together. So
exactly,
you know,
it's glue.
Yeah,
I think like to bring it back to like artists again, I think that's what ultimately ends up making people invested in certain artists more than other ones. Like the amount that they're opening up with you to then put you in a position where you feel like you understand, or rather you feel like someone else understands. Right. And I think that's what like having a platform and being vulnerable, I think is such a potent mix, because like when people see someone on that platform be vulnerable, it's on such a wide scale that so many people are like, wow, someone else gets it.
Yeah.
Someone else gets the feeling of being lost, or they get the feeling of loss. But I think they're hard feelings, and I think a lot of times we're taught in different ways to suppress vulnerability. Right. Like I think about, look at children, right? You think like about a bunch of 2-year-olds running around. and so many times I'll hear like if the 2-year-old starts crying for whatever reason, parents will be like, stop that crying, turn off the tears, you're okay. Yeah. Like they'll try to convince them that they're not feeling anything. Which I think, I mean, in the moment you don't think about how it's like really fucking up the kid.
In the long term, right?
Yeah,
you just trying to calm it down.
Yeah, you just want to like, you want to relax the situation, you want to quiet, maybe you're stressed. But you're teaching that kid to be, emotionally crippled. Yeah. And rather, more so, you're teaching him to not open up about being emotional. Right. I think about, like, I was in a relationship once, and like, not that I was like anti-crying in front of girls or whatever, but I just like, I don't know, I didn't want to like be, I don't know.
Premise before you say it.
Yeah. But like, this was 2010, 2011. So like, I was at a point where it was hard for me to be that emotionally open with people I was in a relationship with. And there was a Sunday when my brother died, right? And I happened to get the news. Like, I didn't get the news in a setting where like I knew that I'd be getting some bad news.
For sure.
I just knew that I had to like get a voicemail from my dad. So I listened to the voicemail, and then the girl I was with just happened to be in the room at the time. And man, like I dropped the phone and like started bawling immediately.
For sure.
And I wasn't thinking about, man, is she in the room right now or whatever. But then she comes over, sits next to me. I tell her what happened. She starts crying. And then that moment kind of brought us closer together in a big way, just because it put me into a space where we're like, wow, emotions opened her up. Exactly. And we're sharing this like moment right now. Yep. Even though she doesn't like, she's not going through the same thing. It's empathy. But the openness brought a lot of empathy.
And that's crazy. The openness brought a lot of empathy. One thing I talked about in my first episode of The Power of Vulnerability is how like we may not want to be vulnerable in certain situations because maybe we feel as if what we want from that situation may not be reciprocated, or like we won't be understood, or we might be judged, right? Like whatever it may be. But then like if you actually allow yourself to be vulnerable, you allow yourself to be heard. You actually give yourself a voice and then you give like the difficulties you're facing inside or whatever it is, a voice to actually begin to go and move forward, right? And like you opened yourself up to empathy you didn't even know possibly would come, but then it happened, and then you connected even closer to your loved one.
Yeah.
So that's deep. That's the power of vulnerability, in my opinion.
What?
But okay.
Not to be total devil's advocate, but like, I think we do live. I mean, I'm sure that there have been like iterations of this in the past, but from what I'm seeing, we definitely do live in an era now of certain heartlessness to a degree, and more mediums with which to be heartless. So like, if we take social media for example, they say that you're not supposed to vent about your problems on social media because one, people aren't really gonna give a fuck, or people are gonna like troll you, like cyberbullying. And because like, I know people make fun of cyberbullying, like, why don't you just log off the computer, right? Which I understand that argument too, to a degree, but like, because technology and social media are such a big part of just how our day-to-days function, that it's hard to just like unplug completely from it. You know what I mean? And I think, I don't know, social media's put us in a space where we're constantly seeking validation. And I think that search for validation seeps into a lot more aspects of our lives, where then just like genuineness, genuine interactions with people can kind of get handicapped because there's this extra element of, I feel like I gotta get attention for this behind it. Or like, I don't know, we're just living in a very weird time. Like, even like being open about like your depression or whatever. Like, say you do like a vlog, right? You do a vlog, you put it out, you're talking about something. People immediately will kind of they'll write it off. Like, they just want to get likes, or they just want to like go viral. Like, there's so many other like ways people try to undercut the importance of actual, genuine, vulnerable moments.
I agree. Oh yeah, that was big. So the other day, I was talking to you about, and I had a really crippling, like, depressive episode. I actually like recorded everything. I recorded why I felt like I was plunged into that session, what that session felt like, and just like everything else. And I've been sitting on that recording, unsure to publish it. It's very interesting, and for similar reasons where I'm like, you know, like, I could do this, and you know, it's a very raw moment. You know, I want, you know, this series of like these audio recordings of doing this podcast to be very raw. You know what I mean? Like, but it hit to a point where I'm like, okay, well, this is about meditation, right? And so, but it did loop into how, when I was in that crippling episode, I did bring myself to a point where I was like, okay, well, at least let me meditate on these feelings. At least let me meditate on these thoughts, right? Let me meditate on the fact that like I'm bawling, crying, and I don't really understand why. I'm standing straight up in the middle of the apartment all by myself, feeling lifeless and just completely heavy and dull. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't really make any sense. But why haven't I posted it yet? I don't know. It's a great question.
Well, I think that brings to light, like, so I connect a lot as like a creator of songs, right? Or like even like a writer of stuff. Not everything I write and record will be put out. Some stuff is just for you.
Just to express,
you know, like, you just
need
need
it out.
It always feels kind of like exercising a demon. You know what I mean? Like writing a song about suicidal thought feels like exercising a demon, because I'll often feel better after writing it. But then there's like the second question of, can I doll this demon up enough to put it out in public now? That would be a song that's released.
And that's interesting, because you use the word dull the demon enough. And I think, like, should we really be like dulling it?
Oh, see, I love this question, because I think we do think a lot about exploitation, right? So like the idea of being depressed, it can easily be like exploited and like romanticized and like pushed in the media a certain way. Like, I remember when what was that show with the suicidal girl? It was on Netflix. I can't remember, but people got really mad about it. It was really popular.
Was it the
13 Reasons Why.
Yeah.
Right? People got really like upset about it because they felt like it was romanticizing depression, romanticizing suicide. And I think that's such a fine balance with any type of platform, where it's like, all right, yeah, I want to, you know, art is supposed to reflect what's going on in here. But at what point does it become exploitation? Is it when you're making money off of it now? Is it when a lot of people are watching it now? Is that when all of a sudden like it's no longer legit? Now it's just simply a marketing ploy.
You know what's interesting is this kind of takes me to the concept of intention, right? So what was your intention of like when you made that recording, or you wrote that script, or like you did whatever you need to do to help you work through that depression that you had? Like, was the intention simply to like help heal yourself through that as an avenue to unblock that energy channel so that you could flow? Was the intention to be an example as to how like maybe you've experienced or you had a loved one that experienced depression in that way, so you want to try to touch as many people as possible with like your own personal experience? Or the last intention being, I know it can make me some bucks, right? But I also feel like that's important. Why intention setting, in my opinion, is like really important no matter what you're doing.
Well,
I feel like.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
No, but like, how do you gauge that with people you don't know? So like, you know, let's take Kanye, right? Kanye, you know, talking about being bipolar, talking about all this.
Right.
Now, there's a lot of people who are seeing everything that's happening as simply a marketing ploy, an attention stunt,
For sure.
all that. But is that unfair to him if he is legitimately going through bouts with manic depression and bipolarity? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And it's like, I think celebrities, we often give them a little less sympathy. Yeah, we give them a lot less wiggle room. So I think it's easier to gauge intent with the people you know. But then if we're talking about people who are putting out these like big bodies of work that like, you know, remember Logic? Logic had this song about the suicide hotline. It was the phone number, right?
Yeah.
And so many people were clowning it because they felt like it was pandering. Like it's like, almost like with any type of positive thing, there's always the people who come and say, you're not really legitimately trying to help the cause, you're just trying to make a buck. Even like Macklemore had the gay marriage song.
Okay, yeah.
That's like a different topic, but the same thing got lobbed at him of just, man, you're just trying to capitalize on like a current social trend. And like, I think there is a lot more mental health awareness going on, a lot more like emotional awareness conversations being had. Right. So yeah, some people feel like, well yeah, niggas trying to make a buck.
But also, it's opening up certain doors and certain avenues. I mean, like, I definitely agree with that. I remember seeing one of his live perform. I wasn't there, but it was on TV for Logic.
Grammys probably,
yeah. When he had everyone came out in the white T-shirts, and they had the number, you know. And I was just kind of like, yeah, that's real. And like everyone kind of stood up and held hands together and was just trying to commune together on this topic on how. And he was just started going off on like mental health and like suicide and stuff. And I was like, yo, like he's real live, like dedicated to talking about this. And like and from that I kind of got more of like a pure type of vibe coming from why he was doing this. Like, yeah, sure, there's definitely some numbers involved in what he's doing. He's an artist, like he's like pretty well known, you know what I mean? Like he's making money off of this.
It's like,
but at the same time, like it's like how you're using your platform, going back to that concept, or even looking at Kaepernick and how he used his platform that actually ended up jeopardizing his career, and now is plunging him into a completely different direction that maybe he didn't think that was going to cost him, you know, his whole football career. Or maybe he did think it would, you know, but he just didn't care.
He didn't care, exactly.
He didn't care, but he was willing to, he got to a point of like, I guess fandom, or just like being so known that he was like, you know what, like I'm sick of this, I'm going to do something, use my platform to do something, and now look at where he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, still, okay, the marketing thing, the money thing, that's definitely something, but I do personally feel like using a platform for something that's beneficial, and even if it's just beneficial for yourself, but you never know who else you might be touching with something that is helping to heal you.
Exactly.
And so, like, I mean, there's always going to be the naysayers, the people that are not liking what you're doing. They're always going to have a lot of comments. Like, you even mentioned that earlier in what you're going to post soon, your next philosophical, you know, to be like the topic, right? There's going to be people that aren't going to agree with your point of view. But that's why it's always cool to leave it open for dialogue.
Yeah. And, all right, also, just to break down the nitty-gritty of something, here's the thing. In this world, you're going to have to make money, right? Like, everyone has to make money to exist. And I'm not saying that from, like, a materialistic standpoint, a greed standpoint. It's just facts.
Right.
So, if you have to make money, right, why not make money doing something that is definitely ostensibly positive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're straight up putting out that suicide hotline phone number, talking about how it's a very real issue, making it a mainstream conversation. That's a top 5 single in the fucking country.
Right.
So yeah, you're making a ton of money off of it, but why not, make money off of a positive thing?
Right.
It's not necessarily exploitation.
Also, I was listening to a couple of they're kind of like self-help or on YouTube. So a couple of videos people have made, just kind of how mind hacking, how to think like a millionaire, how to make $1 million, how to get your mind together. And it's funny, literally they always begin with, don't think about the money. Align yourself, work through yourself, heal yourself, know where your greater purpose is. And then once you're in full alignment or aligning yourself more, the money will come.
Yeah.
Your ideas will be paramount to the point where you're helping so many people. And that's another thing, they were talking about helping people. How can you help people? It seems to be every time I listen to one of these documentaries or I read a book, it's do something that helps someone else solve a problem.
Yeah.
And then eventually you'll realize more people need help solving, if it's not that same problem, a similar problem. And so if you feel very aligned with what you're doing.
No,
I did that earlier.
If you feel more aligned.
If you feel more, and then once you feel more aligned, the money will literally it will come. Yeah. You know what I mean? Don't worry about that. Just worry about aligning yourself and shedding a message that will help people. You know what I mean?
There's authenticity in that.
Exactly.
I think that's what ultimately makes so many people latch onto it, is because of one, the quality of the insight, and two, the authenticity of it. Right. People want to follow that.
Right.
I think that's why I want to be a musician.
Right.
Because once again, to get to a platform where I can then touch a lot of people with it. That's been a big part of trying to streamline my creative process of figuring out the right way to make poignant statements that don't sound preachy, pandering, corny, or cheesy.
Right.
But they're very much aimed and focused, and they cut right to the heart of the thing.
Right.
But in a way that's down there with you, instead of looking at it from this higher order thing.
Right. No, I feel that.
I don't know how we ended up talking about that.
I told you, I semi-structured.
We just go.
Semi-structured and it just keeps flowing. I didn't expect to start talking about logic. But here we are. No, that's cool. I think honestly, I think that answers a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And it's really cool having someone else here to talk about this issue, right? This is a series that I want to continue expanding and talking about with more people about their experience.
Yeah.
And just is there power and vulnerability?
So much power.
And granted, you're in the arts industry, you're trying to become a musician. Well, you are a musician and you're just trying to get bigger. Yeah. Right. So I like how you spun the marketing thing in there. It shows that your mind is thinking on it's kind of pinpoints into yourself, right? So is that something you would arguably say that you kind of struggle with? You're producing all this vulnerable content, all this really you're trying to connect with people, so maybe that's your intention. Do you ever struggle with the process of making money off the things that you connect with? Is that something you grapple with?
I struggle with all right, so I remember I was at a show one time, and someone was they came up to me and they were talking about they were asking me don't you feel she was being depressed is your thing, that's
that's your identity,
that's my musical thing, I'm the sad man,
yeah.
That's my thing, but well, all right, one of the fundamentals of marketing is that you take something real and then you amplify it.
Okay.
So me having a lot of problems being cripplingly sad, right? I already make music about that. So yeah, a lot of the imagery that will surround the material is gonna also reflect that. A lot of the it's all very much me, right. But it's me with kind of a budget and tools. Yeah. I can be a sad motherfucker with a nice camera now to capture it on a video, I can now like make a nice music video with it. And is that exploiting my sorrow and trying to play on other people's sorrow? That's not what the intent. Once again, intentionality. That's not what the intent is.
Right.
The intent is to make good content that is authentic.
Right.
So yeah, the video's gonna be dope. People will want to look at it, and yes, the content will be real. That I am sad. You know what I mean? So like, I don't like hearing people talk about. I mean, I get exploitation. I understand it, but I think sometimes people have to know what the fuck they're talking about. Like, not everything is trying to exploit something. Even like, can you hand me that sticker?
Sticker.
Yeah. So like I got the, I don't know if you can see, I got the glass bullet, right? Glass bullet's kind of like, the glass bullet's kind of like my symbol now. It's gonna be the title of my next project. And I got someone went in my DM and they were like, dude, do you feel like, you know, your bullet is glamorizing gun violence? Like, do you feel like you're using a very like hurtful symbol to kind of advance your brand and your marketing? And the thing is that I never looked at it as exploiting anything at all. Okay. I didn't think about any of that shit, and I wasn't making it from a point of being insensitive. The glass bullet literally symbolizes it's about being vulnerable. It's glass because it's fragile and transparent and a little beautiful. That's why I went with the stained glass. Right. So as a person, I am transparent, I am fragile, vulnerable, and beautiful. But the bullet aspect is something that is still potentially dangerous, potentially volatile, something that also has a lot of aim, a lot of direction, something that can, yes, start a war, but can also be the defining thing to end a war. So I just think that the glass bullet offers a lot of complexity as to what human beings are. Okay. But niggas ain't trying to hear that. Like, I understand people just get mad at shit when they see it. Yeah. And like, I get it. Like, I understand that we
it's
do.
the current climate, right? Like, so much push for gun control.
It's because so many things have gone ignored for so long that, there's going to be now a pushback of, I think, hypersensitivity in response to an era of ignored sensitivity. Right. So, like, I understand that. I'll wade those waters. I'll have those conversations when they come. Yeah. I just want people to be willing to hear me out about explaining how something is not, like, no pun intended, but it's not meant to be a weapon. Like, I didn't make glass bullet to hurt people.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that you being open to expressing that to people, and that's another piece of vulnerability. You're taking the power to express that what that means, what that symbol really means to you, but you're not necessarily expecting them to be receptive. And like a lot of times, as I mentioned before, we may not want to talk about why we did something or why something is a certain way because we're afraid that people may not be receptive to what we're talking about. They won't agree with us. But that doesn't matter. No. Like if that's how you, like, if this is kind of like the embodiment of just your like everything, then like you're like, like this is what it is, this is me, and like I'm not trying to like condone anything, I'm not trying to, whatever it is. Yep. Like I'm literally just expressing myself and you expressing that to other people, but not expecting them to agree or not agree or whatever it may be, just expressing it as a means of expression. Yeah. Then that is powerful in my opinion.
I think that the concept of just open dialogue is kind of a lost art. I don't think people like to go into having dialogues free of their hostilities. True. We can have differing opinions on stuff. Right. Like whenever I have discussions like this one right now, I immediately picture like old Greece or Rome in the bathhouse, and Plato and them niggas just sitting around pondering stuff, disagreeing on very big fundamental things like what is right and wrong.
Right, for sure.
But being able to just have discussions about them, lay out their thoughts, and it's more so about how do you explain your point as opposed to personal hostility. True. And I think I'm really good at having those discussions. You seem like you're really good at having them. Not a lot of people are good at having them. I think that's what causes a lot of uproar. I mean, I think we've been seeing so many divisive comments and characters in the media, right? That my favorite part of it is that it's opened up this like magnification on, are we able to have discussions and disagree openly?
Like, can we still debate?
Yeah.
Without
can we still debate
getting too hot?
Not hating the motherfucker after,
Too heated. Yeah, no. I mean, and it's funny because even if a debate gets a little heated, I feel like you should still be able to debate through that. And actually, this is kind of crazy. I'm gonna veer off onto this. This also kind of makes me think about like when you get into confrontations with your significant other, so like a family or whatever type of relationship you may be having with that person. If it gets really heated, a lot of times people just say, I can't do this.
Yeah.
They just like walk out and they're just not talking about the situation, or not talking about a situation at all and letting it go untalked about, and it's just kind of like festering inside you and that person because you haven't talked about it, and it's just like something that's happened from avoidance of being able to sit, have a dialogue, just to hear people out and what's really going on. I feel like
it's hard.
I just feel like
I guess it's hard.
I don't think it has to be hard. I don't think it has to be hard, and I think that maybe it could have something to do with how, our environment, how like that nature versus nurture, like how we're brought up maybe. I mean, not to throw my household under the bus, but I can arguably say that effective communication, really explaining when you're upset about something and why you're upset, or like being able to talk about your feelings, was not really something that was done. Everything was like kind of explosive, you know what I mean? Like you hold things in for a while, then eventually it's like, I'm really mad about these 10 things because you pissed me off about dropping the milk on the floor. It's like,
it opens up.
It's like, I had no idea you were mad at this. I had now you're telling me you're mad at me for 10 different things that I did over the span of who knows how much time, but you never told me. I didn't know.
It just lets the pressure build.
Exactly, and just explodes.
I had a moment one time, and I'd love to hear your take on this, because like everyone I tell it to, they think I'm being a dick, right? I had a moment. I was talking to a person, and like something I said, and like I know when I'm wrong in moments, but like I was really going back to realize if I did say something triggering to make this person mad, and I didn't. Like I really didn't say anything crazy, and I say that honest to God. But for some reason, they just veered off and started like getting really hostile towards me, and I was just like, something's off. Okay. I feel like this is not like, I'm concerned. Right. And I asked her straight up, have you ever been psychiatrically evaluated? I know it's a harsh question, but I wasn't asking it from like a place of like being judgmental, like I'm about to clown on you and like start making jokes. Right. It was me literally being like intrigued about how did we get to this point from what I just said, and is there something maybe going on up there? And if there is, I'd like to know, just because then I think I can apply more empathy to the situation, or more patience rather, right? True, and then like she got mad at first, of course. She's like, why did I say something crazy, or am I getting crazy or whatever? I'm like, okay, like no, I'm genuinely curious, just based on how this interaction has just gone. And then she was like, yeah, I have, and I'm bipolar.
True.
So then it was hard for her to like push through to like be vulnerable with me about that. That probably wouldn't have happened if I didn't, shoot the bullet. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it hurt, but it put her in a space where she opened up, and then we could discuss how, I feel like I had issues with that type of, I don't call it disorder, but I've had issues with that. And then it became just a very open dialogue. But it's just, sometimes you have to cut through a very hard question to have those opening ups. It's like cutting your stitches or something.
Yeah, you keep trying to get to the center of it.
Yeah,
that's better, because the longer you skate around the edges of it, beat around the bush, what we say, the more like that pain will continue to fester and fester. Like if you wouldn't have asked that question and just like walked away like, man, she crazy, I ain't trying to talk to her. There may have been, because you don't even know what she felt by being able to open up about that. Maybe she felt a sense of clarity, like, oh man, maybe I'm having an episode, maybe something just switched me into having an episode or whatever it may be. You know what I mean? So you got straight to the point, and I feel like I really feel like it's good to get to the point, even if it's painful.
It was a harsh. I feel bad typing it.
I mean, it was like, there are other ways you probably could have said that.
I think it's just when people read psychiatrically evaluated. It's such a heavy, like, but that's what it's called.
I mean, you can say, like, have you ever been to a therapist? Like, I don't know, but you.
But not, no, because that wouldn't have
hit it. I don't know.
Because, like, a lot of people go to therapy who, like, and I think society throws around the term crazy too much, right?
Sure.
So, like, yeah, you're right. I didn't just want to write it off like, yeah, she's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
No, I wanted to know what is actually going on,
right.
so then I can like understand that. Crazy is so blanket, you know.
I mean, at the end of the day, it worked. It worked in that situation.
But I think a reason why that hostility came up from her,
right.
and also why other people think I'm a dick for asking it, is because we're brought up in a generation or a society that like a lot of people are fucking judgmental.
Yeah.
So it's like people have their guard up about people are gonna judge me, they're gonna attack me, they're gonna not understand me. Because a lot of that fucking happens. Like a lot of people don't wanna be receptive. So like that's why I get that as well.
Yeah.
Because you know you gotta protect yourself. But that's why I look at it like I came from another time period, from 3086. I crash landed here, and I feel like I'm literally like studying present day society. Like I have no judgment at all. I'm just writing a paper on you motherfuckers. Like I just want to literally have like an objective, just understanding of how everything's going on. And yeah. I don't know what time it is.
I don't know. I was thinking about to bring this to a close though.
Yeah, it's 11:02. Probably.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, that was today. This is, say your full name.
Osaze Oluwole Akereja.
Exactly.
But you call me Saze.
Exactly why I wanted him to do this. But yeah, thank you again for listening in. Again, I'm your host, Noche. And it was a pleasure to talk about the Power of Vulnerability Part 2. And I look forward to expanding the series. So thank you so much.
Glass Bullet coming soon.
Plug. All right. Thanks, guys.